أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح.
الحمد لله نحمده ونستعين به ونستغفره ونتوب إليه، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله أرسله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره المشركون. عباد الله، أوصيكم وإياي بتقوى الله. أوصيكم وإياي بتقوى الله. أوصيكم وإياي بتقوى الله. واذكروا نعمة الله عليكم إذ كنتم أعداء فألف بين قلوبكم فأصبحتم بنعمته إخوانا، وكنتم على شفا حفرة من النار فأنقذكم منها. الحمد لله على نعمة الإسلام. الحمد لله على نعمة الإيمان. الحمد لله على نعمه كلها ظاهرها وباطنها. الحمد لله على نعمة حبيبنا وسيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين. الحمد لله على نعمة القرآن. الحمد لله على نعمة يوم الجمعة يتلاقى فيه المؤمنون ويتلاقى فيه المسلمون. أما بعد. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran commanded for us to establish the scales of justice. And we often repeat this verse every Friday. إن الله يأمر بالعدل والإحسان وإيتاء ذي القربى وينهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تتذكرون. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands for justice as He commands for prayers. So justice is one of the foundational pillars of Islam, even though we don't say that Al-Arkan al-Islam khams, the pillars of Islam are 5, but justice is a pillar in Islam because it's the foundation of the society. And we are called upon to establish justice even against our own self by saying things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in essence, demand of us to be just even if it is against our own self. So today I want to really talk to you about the prevalence of Islamophobia, but more importantly of how to respond to it, which is the critical part that I want for us to focus on. Most likely you have been following the World Cup, I'm upset because they didn't invite me to play it. That's a side issue. I played soccer in my college, so that's my upset. But we could see the double standards that have been applied relative to the first Muslim country that is hosting the World Cup. All of a sudden, almost Islamophobia went on 24/7 without any stoppage whatsoever. Now, some of the claims are legitimate, so we're not going to all of a sudden say that the Muslims are purely good and nothing happened. No, there are some issues that in there. Labor rights are very critical in relations to both Qatar and also the region. But I wrote a piece to say that if the issue of labor rights are to be the focal point, I want to ask the question, how many of the Western companies that were hired for all these projects, that they remembered that their labor rights only in 2022 after they opened the World Cup? So for the past, from 2010, 2011 till now, most of these companies that were operating are Western companies, right? So is labor rights only an issue that you want to use it when it's convenient, and then use all types of issues to say about human rights? The second part of the double standard, and again, those who know the region, Iraq has faced almost 1.5 million deaths, caused death as a result of the illegal US invasion. And nobody actually mentioned the human rights. The same countries that are putting for us what you call Johnny-come-lately human rights are completely silenced, not only on Iraq, but the fact that we have Abu Ghraib, which was the prison that tortured Muslims. But also, if you really want to talk about human rights, then let's bring in Guantanamo Bay, where you have actually people been sitting and rotting there for 20 years without any rights whatsoever. So why is it that human rights, you think that you actually can advocate for human rights, but completely forgotten? And even in here, again, in California, because we like the ocean and so on, we're #1. We have the largest prison population in the world per capita, state of California, over 1 million prisoners. They always are mentioning that there's prisoners here and there. So don't go around preaching if your house is made of glass. France, which already also all of a sudden discovered human rights, on the border between France and the UK, there is the Eurotunnel. Almost daily, there are Muslims as well as immigrants, migrants that die trying to cross from France to the UK. They're run by trucks, and daily there are people that are dying in the Mediterranean and the English Channel. That these are immigrants. So much so that the civilized Europeans, between two quotation marks, because we don't want to actually give it, the civilized European Union has a law. This is, you need to know, the European Union has a law. If you're a fisherman or a person that have a boat, like Greenpeace, very really courageous people, if you go out to rescue the refugees and the immigrants that are drowning in the Mediterranean, your boat can be confiscated and you're fined. That is today. This year, almost 2,200 migrants and refugees drowned in the Mediterranean, while the European ships can see those immigrants and refugees drowning, but they actually will not go and rescue them. Don't tell me that Europe, with all its boats, the United States has many fleets in there. They have 2 full fleets in the Mediterranean. There shouldn't be any human being dying and drowning in the Mediterranean. But because they are the wrong religion, not the wrong religion in terms of its foundation, but because the Europeans see that Islam is the wrong religion, we're not prized refugees like the Ukrainians. We don't have blonde hair and blue eyes. We're not prized refugees. Wrong color, wrong race, therefore, it's a violation. Therefore, your boat will be confiscated and you will be fined. Now, the opposite of this, if you're a human being in Europe and you see a dog drowning, you will be fined for not rescuing a dog. That's the law today in Europe. Rescuing a human being, your boat can be confiscated and you're fined. Not rescuing a dog, you are fined for not rescuing a dog. So basically, the value of a dog is being made more valuable than a human being. That's the reality that we're dealing today. So that's why I mentioned the double standards in relations to the treatments on human rights. And all of a sudden, the human rights is being touted as the Muslims do not have human rights. Now let's add a little bit more. In Europe today, there are camps that have refugees and immigrants that crossed into Europe that have been held in these camps for 3-4 years without any charge or any type of guilt. These are just human beings that they cross, and many of them are Syrians, Afghans, Iraqis, from Burma, from Myanmar, Ethiopians, Senegalese, Somalis, right? From Mali as well, Libya, from Algeria, Tunisians, you name it, they're there, they're in camps that are held without any rights whatsoever because they're not allowed to enter into Europe. We're talking about thousands of individuals in Greece, in Italy, in Spain, in Portugal. In Hungary, they actually completely prevented people from moving from one place to the other. And again, they'll always say, well, we're afraid of terrorism. Excuse me, like, did you test the Muslim blood? There's like the DNA, do we have like a terrorism DNA marker? You participated in destroying 2 countries right there immediately in Iraq and Syria, destruction of Libya, right? Continued engagement in Somalia, and all of a sudden you say, oh, we're worried about. So basically killing people there, disrupting their life, causing the mass flight of people, and then you don't want to wash your hands out of it. All right? Hypocrisy, basically just like have a field day every day, and then they stand up and as these diplomats, and they are just so nice, they want to put a sign on their arm in order to teach us lessons about human rights, especially in relative to gender issues, but not giving us exactly their responsibility for death and destruction. My estimate, since 1979, close to 12 million Muslims have been killed as a result of Western intervention. So when we talk about colonialism, it's not something in the past, it is today. Just recently, I was in France. I do a lot of work also in Islamophobia in France. As we are coming to the airport, the French army was going down to deploy people into Mali. Today. And they say, oh, we're trying to prevent terrorism. But again, the reality is the French control the Francophone zone as a result of trying to get resources and revenues into the French coffers. So the double standard. We are a people that demand justice, not only for everyone, for ourselves, but for everyone else. قُلِ الْحَقِّ وَلَوْ عَلَى نَفْسِكَ. Say the truth even if it's against your own self. Well, we're ready. Again, you landed up. We will say everything, right, relative to what happened, and line up and let's take accounting. You know, truth and reconciliation, we're happy. Come on in. Let's do truth and reconciliation. The last part of double standard. And I know this is, again, people don't want to deal with it, right? If you want to deal with human rights, then let me ask the question, where is Palestine in your human rights, what you call discourse? As we're seeing almost on a daily basis, Palestinians are being killed, are being tormented, their homes are being destroyed, taken over by settlers. Not only that, you actually are supporting them in all of the diplomatic settings and sending them weapons. So before you actually begin any human rights discussion, unless you take your position on Palestine, don't talk. Don't talk for any of the European countries, for the United States, for anyone. If you don't address your colonization, your support of settler colonialism in Palestine, if you do not address it first and foremost, please save me, go to Denny's, eat your breakfast, don't say anything. That's basically, we need to tell them this. Don't come and lecture us while you're sending weapons to Israel. Don't lecture us while you're actually casting vetoes in the United Nations to support and protect Israel. Don't talk to us if you're continuously saying that they shoot Shireen Abu Akleh right there in the open, and you actually say we don't want the International Criminal Court to investigate. That's just the level of hypocrisy is just beyond. Right? It's just beyond. So, I know, being Arab, sometimes you get emotional and angry. It's okay. We go from 0 to 80 in less than 3 seconds, faster than Tesla. Alhamdulillah. But again, you need to be concerned about the affairs of the society. So what do we need to do? Really, the question of what we need to do. First, we have to be united. Right? The Prophet ﷺ, Yadullahi ma'al jama'ah. We cannot figure it out. I can't figure it out by myself, right? You cannot figure it out by yourself. No single individual can figure it out by yourself. We need to actually be united to try to craft our responses and to empower ourselves collectively. So, Yadullahi ma'al jama'ah. It's actually, hadith did not say Yadullahi ma'al jama'ah al-Muslima. It's like open-ended. If you are a group and you get together, you actually can make an impact. So we need to figure out how to be united. Now, increasingly, again, this is something painless, some Muslim majority states engage in promoting Islamophobia to protect their seats of power. That's we're seeing it. We've seen it in France. We've seen it in Europe. We've seen it even here in the United States. So we have a phenomenon we call Islamophobia in Muslim majority states. Like in France, Marine Le Pen's party was running out of money. One Muslim country actually provided her resources. This is one of the most Islamophobic figures in France. Marine Le Pen, who released the Front National, which is a neo-Nazi party, heavily anti-Muslim. So, Yadullahi ma'al jama'ah. We have to be united. Second, which is something that is very important. Now let me see if raising your hand, it's okay, it's not gonna violate your listening to the Jum'ah, because I'm asking you to do that. How many of you in here have experienced Islamophobic incident yourself or somebody in your family or someone you know? Just raise your hand if you have experience, whether somebody said something to you, go back home, negative statement, saying something about the hijab, okay? The data shows when we ask Muslims their experience, almost half of us have experienced Islamophobic incidents. Yet when we get to the FBI data, annual data, it says there's only about 164 hate crimes against Muslims. So there is a problem in there. Do you see it? One is we don't report. Part of it is that we have what you call taken the initiative to say, mashallah, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, help me. This is, if I am patient, Allah will reward me for my patience. You are actually misusing patience and trusting in Allah with issues that are of public interest and public benefit. So you need to actually get in the habit of reporting Islamophobia incidents. Now, we made it easy for you. We actually developed an Islamophobia reporting app. Right? So report Islamophobia. Right? That gives you the ability to report these incidents. Why? Because data is important. I know I said about feelings. Feelings are important, but you cannot go and advocate if you don't have data. You can't go to your city council, the school, board of education, the school board, or congressman and say, I have a feeling that I'm experiencing Islamophobia. They'll say, what is the data? All right? Some countries actually don't want to have data at all. So I want people to download, right? We don't actually take your information, but we take your cases in order for us to develop a set of data that we share on a monthly basis and an annual basis. We need to get a sense of what is happening with the community. If a case needs a legal follow-up, we work with CARE. I also chair the Muslim Legal Fund of America as well, so if there is a cases that needs follow-up on the legal front, we have two important legal arms in order to follow up on these cases. We need data. You need to report. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is rewarding you for being patient, but اعقل وتوكل. You need to tie your Camel or Lexus these days, or Teslas, right? And then you do depend on Allah and trust in Allah. But if you don't have this data, then it's basically, if a tree falls in the forest and nobody saw it and it's not on Twitter, did it really fall? The reality is many of us are having these instances on, and nobody is reporting, therefore it did not happen. So 164 cases. In one classroom, I asked my students, half of the students raised their hands that they have experienced Islamophobic incidents. Another part in terms of data, 80% of violent Islamophobic incidents target Muslim women. You want me to repeat again? 80% of violent Islamophobic incidents target Muslim women. The data is consistent in the US, consistent in France, consistent in Australia, consistent in the UK, and across the European Union, as well as in Canada. Muslim women are the primary target of violent Islamophobic incidents. An added piece to this. The primary site where Muslim women get to be assaulted are in public spaces, in particular in the grocery stores. I don't know, there's something with white men who tend to be the primary individuals who assault white women. Seeing a Muslim woman with kids trying to buy tomatoes triggers them. So they feel empowered as Superman in some of the most cowardly undertaking, attacking Muslim women in public spaces. Which means that we have to understand what is taking place relative to Muslim women, especially Muslim women, because they represent Islam in public space with their hijab, so they tend to actually face. If you go, again, whether it's France or other places, that's the primary target in there. So we need the data, it's very critical. Third piece for the data. If you work in the tech industry, right, we're undertaking a survey for Islamophobia in the tech industry. Why? Because we have seen in relations to India, Twitter had a Hindutva PGP party member to be in their office to basically take out and remove information that are speaking about what Muslims are facing. Similarly with Facebook, right? There are many research that just came out, we were engaged in relations to how Facebook actually removes more materials that are of Muslims writing while allowing much of the anti-Muslim material, Islamophobic material to stay there. Now, one area of research, again, I'm not asking for you to raise your hand, many of our individuals who work with Uber and DoorDash and Lyft, when somebody actually orders a service, there's a higher percentage of dropping the service if the person's name is Muslim. So we want to make sure that when we engage with these companies that are interfacing with the society, that they're not tools in their algorithm and what they're doing in such a way that Muslims are receiving Islamophobia at the line of service. So most likely, the algorithm in these companies, they know exactly what's happening, but they don't want to actually act in order to prevent this form of Islamophobia, that is the algorithm that is actually engaging in amplifying Islamophobia. And what a travesty. Algorithm itself is the theory behind algorithm is Al-Khwarizmi, a Muslim mathematician that developed the theory. So now we have an algorithm based on Al-Khwarizmi that is used actually to be antagonistic toward Muslims structurally. So if you work in the tech industry, please make sure to stop by our table outside and fill the survey. And this survey we will actually take the data and we will share it in a report to the broader society, civil society and other. In one of our previous reports that also looked at Islamophobia, Ilhan Omar, in advocating for the position of Islamophobia monitor in the State Department, used our data that showed how Islamophobia is in the society, and therefore this type of research is very, very critical for the work in terms of how to push forth and alter the dynamics that we are facing. Lastly, again, we have a full report on Islamophobia in India, Islamophobia in India, stalking, bigotry. We are experiencing today in the United States the convergence of forces that are targeting Muslims systematically. On the one hand, you could say that we have the evangelical extreme right. On the second, you have the pro-Israel Zionist forces. In the third tier right now, you have the Hindutva advocates in the United States are beginning to organize in relations to targeting Muslims. And we're seeing it again across the country, not only in India, but here in the United States. So I encourage people, we have copies for you in there to take a look in order to understand the phenomena. So when you speak and you begin to relate to what is happening relative to Islamophobia, you're able to respond. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعين به ونستغفره ونتوب إليه وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله أرسله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره المشركون. So the reason that all this is taking place in terms of Islamophobia, whether it's in the World Cup or here domestically, is this effort to try to push Muslims out of the society. And part of it sometimes that we internalize this ourselves. We begin to think, somebody says that, you have 3 eyes, you go to the mirror and begin to take a look to see whether you have 3 eyes. That's an internalized, you begin to be incapacitated. There's something called learned helplessness, where you begin to actually accept the paradigm that has been placed upon you. I want to actually, rather than hide, you need to actually become doubly active and more involved, both as a Muslim and to celebrate who you are as a Muslim. Nothing in your Islam and nothing in Islam in general you should be shy or worried or afraid about. I think the others should be worried and afraid. They're trying to hide their deficiencies, their failure, by trying to stereotype and scapegoat the Muslims. In France, again, their economy is horrible right now. The UK, they passed Brexit, right? Their economy is like in the rears. In this country, we're in debt, like, congratulations, each one of us right now is indebted for almost $120,000 because we have $32 trillion debt. So instead of dealing with these economies, we continue to expand the military budget, and we say, it's the Muslims' fault. So basically, if your car breaks down, it must be a Muslim in the engine. If you have a fight with your wife and husband, it must be a Muslim that is insinuating. Right? Everything is projecting on another, so we don't deal with the fundamental issues that are there. So you need to actually be a person that does not accept Islamophobia as a way to hide. And I know in some back home countries say, walk by the wall and don't get engaged because, they're going to come after you. Again, they're coming after. If you have a phone, they're coming after you. You are on all what you call data. If you have followed the surveillance, if your name is Muhammad, you're surveilled. If your name is Khalid, you're surveilled. If your name is Fatima, you're surveilled. If Aisha is, you're surveilled. Do you think that you're stopped in the airport randomly? I wish that I have the same randomness when we play lotto. I don't play lotto, but like every time you go to the airport, you're randomly selected for, that SSSS, the extra security, right? So worrying that you're going to be watched, therefore I should stay at home, that is how Islamophobia succeeds. The last part of this is also people think that I just need to be having adab. So they use the discourse of adab as a substitute for actually justice. You have to advocate for justice with the highest of adab, but don't use adab to silence yourself from advocating for justice. All right? So there is a misunderstanding of adab. Oh, don't tell anyone. The highest form of struggle in Islam is to say a statement of truth in front of unjust ruler. That is the highest form. And again, if we want to have an example, both Moses and Aaron, Musa and Harun, they went with the utmost adab to speak to Pharaoh. So adab should not be used as a silencing mechanism for us not to advocate for justice. In doing so, you become an aid to injustice rather than confronting injustice in society. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد كما صليت على سيدنا إبراهيم وعلى آل سيدنا إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد اللهم إني داع فأمنوا اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا واصرف عنا بالخير شر ما قضيت فإنك تقضي بالخير ولا يقضى عليك وإنه لا يذل من واليت تباركت ربنا وتعاليت ربنا ردنا الإسلام ردا جميلا ربنا ردنا الإسلام ردا جميلا ربنا ردنا الإسلام ردا جميلا اللهم يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على طاعتك اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه يا رب العالمين اللهم ارحم المسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات يا رب العالمين اللهم ارحم المسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات يا رب العالمين اللهم ارحم المسلمين والمسلمات الأحياء منهم والأموات يا رب العالمين اللهم اشف مرضى المسلمين جميعا يا رب العالمين اللهم اشف مرضى المسلمين جميعا يا رب العالمين اللهم خفف عنهم يا رب العالمين اللهم خفف عنهم يا رب العالمين اللهم ارزقهم شفاء تاما يا رب العالمين اللهم إنا مغلوبون فانصرنا اللهم إنا مغلوبون فانصرنا اللهم إنا مغلوبون فانصرنا وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وأقم الصلاة إن الصلاة تنهى عن الفحشاء والمنكر والبغي يعظكم لعلكم تذكرون
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
لا إله إلا الله استقيموا واعتدلوا أثابنا وأثابكم الله straighten the lines and fill the gaps صلوا صلاة مودع الله أكبر الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين يا أيها الذين آمنوا استعينوا بالصبر والصلاة إن الله مع الصابرين ولا تقولوا لمن يقتل في سبيل الله أمواتا بل أحياء ولكن لا تشعرون ولنبلونكم بشيء من الخوف والجوع ونقص من الأموال والأنفس والثمرات وبشر الصابرين الذين إذا أصابتهم مصيبة قالوا إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون أولئك عليهم صلوات من ربهم ورحمة وأولئك هم المهتدون الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفره إنه كان توابا. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
First of all, Jazakallah khair, Dr. Hatem, for this khutbah. May Allah bless you. So a few announcements. Tonight after Isha, Dr. Hatem Bazian will give a presentation at the multipurpose room, Islamophobia Industry and Strategies to Challenge It. So please come and join us tonight after Salat al-Isha. And there is a table outside, as he mentioned. So please take your time and stop by the table and get the information you need about this subject. The Indian American Muslim Council invites you to attend the annual fundraising banquet today at 6 p.m. at the Sycamore Hall in Poway. More information are posted outside. And please mark your calendars. The first community dinner event will take place on Friday, January the 6th at 5 p.m. Inshallah. More details will come in the next few weeks and days. The elementary school age program every Friday after Salat al-Isha in upstairs in classroom number 6. And also the ICS, the youth program, tonight as usual after Salat al-Isha in the new expansion. And there is something, there are many kids with flu in these days and the cold. So please, if your child has any symptoms of cold and flu, please don't bring them to the youth program. Jazakumullah khair. And please keep in your dua. There are 2 brothers with pancreatic cancer requesting our dua. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them shifa.